person introduced me before indicated, I'm from Ernst & Young. I've been with the firm for roughly 14 years. But I've been in the computer environment for roughly 26, 27 years. So it's quite interesting. I don't have a wonderful story like Kevin. I've never been to prison. And I'm grateful for that. So it's not going to be a fantastic, colorful, flamboyant introduction. What I can say, though, and what resonated with me from yesterday afternoon or mid-morning when I came in, was the mix of persons sitting within the room here. And even a nice motivational session that Leslie just undertook. I think it's wonderful to have the mixture so that you get different views. My past, a big piece of it was in education. So my first introduction to the work world was teaching 5-year-olds. And it was amazing to me how they learned. And I learned a lot from them, mostly what not to do. But I also understood how people learn and what motivates people. And then I took that learning and embellished it with computer learning. And in the early 90s or mid-90s, I developed a little program to be used in the primary school system and shared it with just a handful of persons. And it was wonderful. Everybody was enthusiastic about it. What happened, though, is that, first of all, there was no adoption of it. No will. Whose will, I don't know. But I also saw something that was potentially dangerous. And I don't know if you all got the message that Kevin conveyed this morning. And a big chunk of his presentation actually dealt with social engineering. So he did indicate that the IT guys tend to do a pretty good job in keeping the systems tight. There's usually firewalls between you in the corporate environment and the internet. So pretty much limited windows of access or doors of accesses. And your IT guys usually take care of that. They lock it down. They make sure that only certain type of traffic can get in and out. But the users now have more power than they did before. So they're not only allowing people to go back in and go out of the organization with them, they're also bringing in unwanted stuff. How does that relate to what I understood about people and children? We have adopted social media very aggressively. I don't know that there's anybody sitting in here without a social media account. Maybe a handful. Can you show me? Right, and I say hats off to you. So if you're as old as I am, and if you do a profile or a Google check or a social media check of me, you'll realize he's not an IT guy. And I say thanks. My social media profile has not been updated since 2009. The only publications you're going to see of me would be those where I gave presentations at the Caribbean Association of Banks, at CACAM, at ICAT, at ICAB, and that's fine. Have you ever read that agreement that you signed off on when you signed on to Facebook? Actually, just pull it up on my phone to see if it had changed. I'll tell you what you did. You told them, by scrolling down that nice long page that nobody reads, and checking I agree, they are telling you we can collect your data, we can collect everything that you do and say on our platform, we can collect information about anybody that communicates with you on a personal level or from a corporate level as well. And we can use it for our benefit. There's monetization behind that. Means there's value to the company. It's wonderful that data is out there. How much of it do we really need to be out there? And how dangerous it is for us? Well, we don't have a good grasp on that. What we need to do is keep the education as aggressive as the technology adoption. Very, very important, critical. And I don't think that they're running a parallel race right now. One of the founding members of Facebook, a gentleman by the name of Sean Parker, he indicated, he's no longer with Facebook, he was an executive. He indicated that Facebook hired attention engineers so that they could create fragmented attention for persons on the platform. Can that be productive or destructive? I mean, it says something to me. These guys have stepped back and says, you know what? This has gone way too far. But the world has adopted. We love to communicate. We love the ease of doing things. But do we control it enough? Or do we have the eyes and ears and input to be able to give a correct and balanced view of what should happen? Sometimes not. So it's always good to adopt. It's also good to step back. Guess who said that? Yeah, that's the guy. And there's a great degree of truth to it. We stand on either side of the fence now, either side of the field. So we have within our team guys who have pretty been what we call black hats. So they've done the bad things. They work on the good side now. Of course, ethics is a big thing. So we're very cautious about that. But we understand how the bad guys play. How do I understand what the thief is going to look for when he comes around my household? I have to think like him, right? Understand where the loops are. Understand where my vulnerability is. What time do I get home? What time would my children get home? Which doors or windows remain open at nights? Can anybody make a guess on that? And we had some suggestions this morning. Kali Linux. Anybody else? I have a different choice. Kali Linux is good. It's my choice. Okay? Who has access to that? Everybody. We all do. You know where you get Kali Linux? Through this platform. Do you know what's the first utility I used to hack into a website and got the entire database of credentials, user IDs and passwords back in 2001? That's the guy. All right, we developed scripts, in URL scripts, and we were able to query the systems that were out there that people didn't understand were vulnerable, but we used that. Straight in the browser line there, and it brings back information. You see, the internet is a wonderful place, but it's also a very misunderstood place as well. And if you tell me who controls the body of laws around the internet, if you could find that body, I'd be happy to know them. Not all countries, we don't always play with the same rules, but the internet connects all of us. So I can route some of my undesirable internet traffic through areas that do not observe these laws. That's what makes it a dangerous place. And we have to understand that. I don't know if you can see these graphics very well. There's one to the back and one to the front. The one to the back, and we had good examples of this. Now, I'm trying not to duplicate what was done this morning, but I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because we all not technology experts in the audience here. But we all need to understand. And sometimes, we're in a bad place when we feel we know more than we actually do. The visual behind the first slide to the left is actually a phishing page. And I'm telling you what it is. That's one we executed on one of our clients just recently. You probably see it a lot. And people are always attempting to compromise social media accounts, email accounts. We sent the first image in an email to someone, a target. And what happened, as soon as he clicked, or she clicked, on one of the links that we supplied, the second page opened up. Does it look familiar? Absolutely. Is it real? Absolutely not. So you probably, if you're close enough to the screen, you're probably seeing Facebook-compliance. That's a website that we created in 15 minutes and hosted it out on the internet. And lo and behold, the individual clicked, entered credentials, and we were able to harvest it at the back end on our servers. And that process can be seamless, and it's more frequent than you imagine. So it's out there, and if we don't keep our eyes and ears open and educate our people at a personal and professional level, because sometimes it's very gray where we exist now. I don't know that anybody else in this room has a mobile device, a phone, where you have only corporate information and you don't have a picture of your daughter when she was graduating or when you were at the beach in Bahamas last year. We mix it. There's an overlap. So if I compromise one component of your life, I pretty much have you in my hand. This is an example of a real fraud attempt. In fact, it was successful. The figure is small, it's in US dollars. And again, let me apologize if the graphic is small. Can everybody see it? Okay, so there's a footer in the email, and for obviously for confidentiality purposes, I can't reveal our client's banking information. That email was sent from one party to our client and intercepted. And before arriving at the client, the payment information, the banking information, was modified by a man in the middle and then forwarded back to the target. That's our client. And it looked like that. Right? All they did was change the SWIFT code and of course, the banking account information. And of course, when the client or our client reached or obtained it in his email, he went ahead and paid. There could have been a few cues inside there that he should have paid attention to. But again, he didn't, for whatever reason. I'm going to run through these very quickly because Kevin brought all of these up, most of them anyway. I'll probably stop at one. And this one, this last one here. Equifax is a massive credit reporting company in the United States. Equifax is ISO 27001 certified. And for those of you who know what that standard is, it's an information security standard. What does it mean? It's an attestation that indicates that the company has proper security practices in place. Guess what they do? I have actually worked on that particular project. I've walked the data centers of the company. Didn't stop them from being hacked. Very real. So it can happen to the best of us. So imagine those of us that are not even there, that particular mark, and we exist way below the benchmark. The Yahoo numbers, and all the numbers that you're probably going to see today in the next 20 minutes, are numbers that I think are not cast in stone. You're going to see them being represented differently from different companies. You're going to hear about Yahoo 1 billion accounts. You're going to hear 3 billion. And sometimes it's hard for even me to conceptualize what 3 billion Yahoo accounts would look like. And do you know what happened to many of the Yahoo accounts that were hacked? And I have 2013, 2014, 2016, and 2017. In 2013, the hack took place. In 2013, they said 500 million accounts were compromised. In 2014, they revised the figure. And again, a revision in 16 and 17. What does that say? We really don't understand sometimes the magnitude of the breach. So we don't know what we don't know. in my view, an attack, a social engineering attempt, or fraudulent transfer, a fraudulent wire transfer attempt is dangerous. But I think this is where we need to keep our eyes and ears on. There's a particular type of technology called industrial control systems. Now, I don't know that there's anybody here from the energy sector, but there may be people from the power companies, from the water companies, and so on. You have something called SCADA systems. They monitor valves. They monitor different operations within the plant. The attackers understand that. If I want to have somebody at my fingertips, and in Trinidad we had a problem many years ago. I don't know that it's frequent now, but you heard about kidnapping, you heard about ransomware. Let me talk about industrial control systems. If I take your control systems and I compromise them and I exploit them, what do I do? Could we function here in this hotel? Could we meet here without a water supply or supply of electricity? And if I could make it so difficult for you to even restore it, I pretty much have the power. The bad guys know that. These exploits started way back. The first one that was recorded was in 2012. In fact, there was one in 2010 called Stuxnet. And they actually said it was built by a government. People speculated, was the US government? Some people say no. Information is not always clear, but we know that it did happen. The Stuxnet attacked and exploited industrial control systems and shut down entire energy power plants. That's what it did. It's frequent. These are just a few small examples. But look what the statistics say. This, I believe, came from a Verizon report. There was a massive incline in the year 2016 of attacks on industrial control systems. We don't have the metrics yet for 2017. I can imagine it's not going to be smaller. This was taken from a European Union report, and they talked about some of the largest threats out there to the internet, to organizations, to persons. And you would be familiar with many of them. Some of them are actually multi-tiered threats. They're not just one single one of those vectors that were exploited. So malware might be combined with phishing. As Kevin showed there, I'll try to trick you through social engineering, but I must use some technical aspect to get to your machine and turn on your webcam and capture all the data on your system. And one thing I always go for in my team when we do a red team assessment is to show you that we can actually get all of your emails. We can turn your webcam on, because you can. We can turn your microphone and record your voice. Do you know what's stored in your email? Pretty much anything corporate related. And there's a copy of your email usually stored on a file in your computer. As an administrator, you just can't go and copy it. But we elevate a different level of privilege called system. It's a little higher than the administrator. And we can pretty much capture and steal anything. And that exists, but we use techniques through social engineering and through technical exploits as well. All of these things are there. They're going to change, but that top 10 will probably pretty much remain the same. Maybe just change from one order to the next. Why are all of these things happening? And Kevin said it's easier to do it today probably than it was before. I don't know that it is. What I do know is that people are understanding the technology a lot better, and there are more people out there with more information out there, so there are more avenues to get to things and people. And people are pretty much trusting, gullible. So we use that particular vector. Now, what we tend to do is to utilize stuff. Utilize processes that you already engage in, and then we leverage on that. For example, it was mentioned about somebody's banking account. So if you're doing online banking, and you open a session with your bank, Royal Bank, you have that session open on your computer, and you walk away, and I'm an administrator on your computer, I can have that session, I can steal your session through many different avenues, and I now have that same level of privilege that you do. I want to give you an example of what we did and what we noticed with the industrial control systems. So the industrial control systems that manage and operate the plants and the water authorities and so on, they're really meant to be separate and apart from a corporate network. So there's supposed to be, in true fact, no real connection from the industrial control systems to the internet. But guess what? Because we need to make things fast, efficient, convenient, that principle doesn't always apply. So what companies tend to do is bridge the corporate network to the industrial network, the plant. And they may try to protect that bridge or that tunnel, but they are endpoints. And the endpoints are not hard to find. If I compromise or exploit your corporate network, there's at least one computer, one host that's connected to your plant network. And we can find it. It runs processes. If I'm an administrator on your network, I can find those processes, and it's not difficult to do. And when we do, we will steal that process and get across to that dangerous area. There was a video that we did where we compromised a plant network and navigated around the entire SCADA system. And I didn't know which button to click. So the administrator who's standing next to me said, please don't do that. It's going to cost us $1 million US to get the plant back up, and that button would have shut the plant down. So we understood that, but we didn't know. Exploits are not that difficult. They're getting easier. The information is out there. I showed you what the most important hacking tool is, and we hear about all the different payloads that we can send across our targets, and they kindly send us back information. There's the last one on that particular slide, one called clickless infections. I think that sometimes we don't understand how dangerous and how good these guys are. And most times they ask you to perform an action. If they're doing social engineering, they send you a link, click on it. They send you a file, open it, launch macros. Last year, I believe it was April or May, a guy created an exploit where all you had to do was hover over the link. That's all. That's an action. And that actually called a particular payload from a remote location. It did. Right? Most vendors actually patched up for that particular flaw, but it's always there. Let me give you the last flaw that was discovered just, and my time is running close. It was discovered just last month, just about 2 weeks ago, in fact. They were trying, the vendors were scrambling. Okay? It's one identified with the Intel processors. And what it does, it actually exploits the lowest level of your hardware. And it tries to speculate as to what process. So I can give you a very quick technology breakdown of it. Your computer, you use the applications. There are hardware components inside there, sitting at the bottom, but between there you have software that enable you to interface and interact with the computer. The hardware actually does all the processing. It does all those difficult tasks. It's the laborer. So what he does, he tries to predict exactly what you as the user will try to do so that it makes it efficient for you. So he said, would you choose A or B? And he's right there with both answers. If I know that he has both answers, he's not waiting to find out what happens with a particular path. So if I wanted to choose A, he also has the answer for B. That information is stored in something called cache. And the cache can actually be exploited. What do you see in cache? If exploited, you can see simple things like credentials, user IDs, passcodes. And what does that mean? You're pretty much compromised. Vendors are scrambling right now. I can take a wild pool and guess that maybe 80–90% of organizations, or you representing your organization has not been patched up as yet. And those guys, the codes are out there. If they want to attack, they can. So you better hope and pray that the firewall does what it's supposed to do. Because if it gets to your core system or your virtualized platform, you could be in trouble. This is a graphic that most people probably would have seen already. It talks about the sophistication. The 12-year-olds can exist in the first vertical there. Okay, he can do things. He has Google. When things get a little more complicated, and there's incentive around it, monetary incentive, people try to hack for money. And they have been, many, many years ago. When you look at the third vertical there, you know, not everybody's on your side in your organization. Some people, and we know about this Snowden issues, people inside there are willing to sell information. People are willing to purchase information from persons inside. It doesn't have to be insider only. And then you have the most complex, which is what we call APT. And I don't think that was dealt with this morning, so let me talk just 1 minute on it. An advanced persistent threat was responsible for the Sony hack, for the Target hack, for the Equifax hack. And I'll show you probably an example of what it looks like. Okay, I have 2 minutes. That hack basically plants malware on the system, on the network, and it doesn't act at the same time. So it doesn't go in there blazing guns. It stays there, collects information, gets the intelligence, waits, and it can actually exploit 6 months after, a year after. We have seen it 2 years after. These familiar to you? Do we have metrics in the Caribbean? How can we fix something that we don't have the metrics for? We don't. But we know things are happening. I can tell you that there are thousands that are not on that slide because it's not reported. We have banks in the Caribbean that have been exploited. And the laws and the regulations are not there to mandate that these institutions tell you, the customer, that they have been. So you don't have the power or the information to make decisions. So we sit there in silence and sometimes ignorance. If the regulators don't force the organizations to act in a particular manner, it's going to continue to be like that. So the organization is not just to come one day and say, I need to disclose because I have good integrity. There's monetization. I have some metrics for the Caribbean here, and I have St. Lucia versus Jamaica versus Trinidad. And we talked about technologies. I did a back-to-back comparison. I don't think the slides will be visible to you there, to be quite frank. What it says is that from a technology standpoint, we are at a basic level. A level 1 means we know at the formative stage. We understand that something has to be done. We probably started along a path, but we know we're near maturity. This is about legal frameworks. This metric, in my view, is a little bit skewed. It talks about Trinidad as having a very strong legal framework. So I know that for a fact, and not be true. The cybercrime bill is still waiting there about a decade after to get approved. From a framework perspective is where I think we should be looking. Educate users, but there are many components in a security framework. Not just technology, not just people. There's a reporting component of it. If we don't measure it, how can we understand how it's performing? How can we improve it? I think the slides would be shared with everybody, but we have been working on a particular strategic cybersecurity agenda with a country in Europe. And this is the path that we are taking along there. Must be people involved, the correct people. You must have the work groups. You must have the feedback and the input from people. And there needs to be a focus, there needs to be a policy framework and standards rolling out of that. That's certainly not the end of it. This just takes you through a threat detection path. You can't see it. But what I'm going to show you now very quickly is a short video. It's about 1.5 minutes if you'll bear with me. All right. And it's a next generation tool that EY uses to monitor clients' networks.
This is the PathScan demo. We will demonstrate based on anonymized data which has been extracted from a real network dataset over 2 years.
How can I get audio?
Along the x-axis is time, and along the y-axis is severity. Each circle represents a 30-minute window in which PathScan detected an anomaly. We will focus on the most anomalous event in the entire dataset, which in fact include a real APT attack. Zooming in on the timeline around the most anomalous event, we will see that only 4 detections were present in that day. What is not shown are approximately 200 million net flow events that were not severe enough to report to the analyst.
Well, I'll talk you
Now
through
we will
why
look
that
at the
goes on.
network view.
What it did. And this
Here,
is
the
a real
circles represent
actual hack
hosts,
from
and
live
the lines
data.
between the circles represent communication between hosts. The colour of the lines are proportional to the amount of deviation of the current data from the statistical models. Brighter red has more deviation, and yellow more green. Now let's discuss what the attacker did.
Don't worry about it.
First, phishing.
What's happening there, I can tell you why you look at all the nice, colorful, flowery things out there,
From here,
is that there was a hack.
the location.
It went to a particular system, and information was gathered. It's called reconnaissance
We will focus on the lowest
about that system and surrounding systems.
We receive
And this is
reconnaissance
real live data. We have sped it up a little bit.
horizontal port scanning.
And what happened is we were observing the attacker.
As a set of 4 anomalies.
I did.
The attackers intend to discover services and data which will guide their next move.
We observed the
At that
attacker
point, they moved
to
to this
understand,
host
even
below.
after he exploited the system and compromised it
At
and
this
tried to
point,
move
the attack
outwards.
went in 2
There's
directions.
lateral movement.
To the
But
right,
we
we see a
wanted to
series of
understand
lateral
behavior.
movements, ending in the penetration of.
And what they were trying to do and get to was a system that controlled the cooling system for the data center, the HVAC systems. And as they were about to pull the plug, we had to pull the plug on them. And then they went ahead, so we stopped that and went ahead another part where they actually tried to exploit another data center in a remote location. This is real. The attacker tried to do that. It's actually sped up in fast pace now. Now, what this says is that there was an agenda. Now, our client, our customer, said we can move ahead and let's see what they're doing. Let's get the intelligence so we'll understand what they're going for. So we'll probably understand our information assets a little bit better. Because if we don't understand what they're trying to get, we might be trying to protect everything and protect nothing at the same time. Okay? So that's it for me. I mean, we're a little bit rushed this morning. But if there's any quick question, I suspect we could probably take it this afternoon, because there's a session, a seated session, a panel discussion, which I believe I might be on. Okay. So just want to leave you with this. And that's a quote by Tony Robbins, an entrepreneur, philanthropist. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Anil.